Okay, this is going to be a relatively sloppy way to do all this, which I'm not going to be very proud of, but oh well. Let me see if I can go find my damn bike. But we're going to go over dirty tricks while we're doing that. So, in dirty tricks, the main changes there are actually the fact that you can use it on melee or ranged. And so the biggest benefit there is that obviously it's not restricted to just melee anymore, or just range, or whatever you would want to call it. Before, I believe it was dexterity and perception, so it was good as a crafter stat, but I think they wanted to make it so it was normalized between the two. So now you can actually get a decent amount of dirty tricks, and if you want to go on the higher end, it's pretty expensive, but you know, Kneecap 6 makes it very, very worth it. So let's go ahead and find some shitty little NPCs to punch, since I'm going to have really, really crappy damage because of this retarded setup that I'm running right now, but that's okay. It'll work for what I'm doing. So basically, we're going to go ahead and use dirty tricks first, which we already have everything kind of set up, which as I keep going with this little marathon of sorts, I'm going to switch between everything as such. So, obviously we have all of our little benefits here, so we're going to first use Dirty Steel, which should still stun NPCs and applies a dot. Yep, still stuns. Applies a poison dot. It no longer reduces armor. Does not reduce armor anymore. So you will not gain that benefit. But the dot is much harder to dispel now, so that's always a plus. And it's still pretty good. The stamina cost actually was reduced as well. I believe around like a 35% reduction across the board. So it's actually very good with rifles now as well. And then of course we have our Kneecap. So let me just back up, and he runs pretty slow. Not fully, because it's like a 17% snare, but that's fine. And then, obviously, the snares are much harder to dispel because of the way they change snares, but you'll see that in Escape Artist and First Aid videos. But, yeah. And then we obviously have Sabotage, which is now the armor reduction ability. And they did keep the damage reduction, but it only works on NPCs. So, when we go ahead and use Sabotage, armor reduction, and their damage gets reduced. So it's still technically useful in PvE, and it's also good in PvP, and the armor scaling of the reduction is actually much higher than it was, because you can see you can get up to 1,113. So basically, I believe is what happened is that they swapped Sabotage and Group Tactics in terms of armor debuffs. So you'll no longer be able to reduce someone's damage output by a percentage, but you will get an armor cut. It does stack with every armor cut in game, and it does reduce damage. Dirty Steel still stuns and applies a damage over time, and it's much harder to dispel. And obviously you still have Kneecap, pretty much the same, other than the fact it's much harder to dispel Kneecap 6.